What's up, friends? Welcome to SPDM TV. My name is Mike, part of the SPDM crew, and I watch a lot of TV. We talk about various TV topics, reviews, and general appreciation of TV, past and new. You can follow me on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Serialized at MLHT2452 to see what all I'm watching. So, way back when, and by way back when, I mean a couple of years ago, it's not like it's that long. I used to write for a website where they gave me the opportunity to podcast. And what I did was that I'm taking a look at some of these episodes that I did before and looking to see if I can kind of introduce them to a new audience. So I am going to do a series where I release some of those episodes just so that I can showcase just some of the past work that I've done.
On today's episode, I have a guest. Yeah, that's right. I've graduated to having a guest. So please welcome to the show my good friend Chris. What's up, Chris?
Yo. Hey, Mike. Good to be here. This is going to be.
Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for inviting me. No, this will be great because we used to watch these shows when we were kids. So this is going to rekindle our youth.
Exactly. So just quick background for everybody. I've known Chris since I was maybe about 5. So we've known each other a very long time. So there's no better person that I would want to talk about the show X-Men the Animated Series. So back in November, X-Men the Animated Series, which used to air on Fox Kids on Saturday mornings, right?
Saturday mornings, yes.
Back when Saturday morning cartoons were actually a thing. Debuted in November of 1992.
Good
Boy,
Lord.
I feel old, but hey, it is what it is. But X-Men the Animated Series is basically what it is. It is an animated show based on the X-Men comic book series, specifically the newer comic books from the late 80s, early 90s, featuring a cast of just not the best of the best, but just some of the more well-known X-Men characters that have just blown up as people or as mutants who are just, everybody knows now because of the movies. So you've got Professor X, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Gambit, and then good old Wolverine as well.
Yes.
Among many others. But it's just an episodic show where they go from episode to episode. For the most part, there's some episodes that have a lot of just continuing storylines, but for the most part, it's just one episode, one story, and then that's it. And then we move on. Some connecting threads, but that's pretty much it. So X-Men the Animated Series ran for 5 seasons. Currently available to stream on Disney Plus if you have it. So that's definitely a plus. So Chris, what was your first experience with X-Men the Animated Series?
Well, first, you're going to hate inviting me on because I'm going to be a jerk and kind of correct you on something here.
That's fine. Go for it.
Actually, X-Men was very much a continuing storyline throughout the episodes. They kind of would focus on a different thing, more or less, for most of the episodes, but there was an overarching thing, for example, with like Professor X and Magneto when they went off to the Savage Land, and that would carry over many episodes, or Wolverine's relationship with Sabretooth, for instance. It was actually one of the first, maybe the first, if not the very first, like cartoon show for kids that kind of had like a long going storyline, because most cartoons up to that point were, just story by story, episode by episode. But that one, they would actually like continue things and have callbacks to earlier episodes. And the only other show I can think of before X-Men that was like that was probably Rocky and Bullwinkle, where every week led to another thing. But that was a really like loose story. That was not very plot driven show. So X-Men, especially at that time, maybe it doesn't seem so much now today compared to the way some shows are, but it did have a lot of continuity going between the episodes and the storylines. Sorry, I just had to say that.
This is why I invited you on for this and another one we'll be doing soon together. So no, it's all good. Correct me. Speak your mind, good sir. That's
I will.
So give me your first experiences with the show, what ultimately drew you to it, and what are some things that you love about it?
So I remember when I was a kid, like I was obsessed with some superheroes like Batman, Superman, the Incredible Hulk, and Captain America, but and Spider-Man. Of course, he was probably my second after Batman. I wasn't really familiar with X-Men until the show came out, and I remember seeing commercials for it, this new show called X-Men, and I thought, this looks really stupid. This is dumb. I don't want anything to do with this show. And I just made up my mind that it was a bad show, and it was lame, and would have nothing to do with it. I wouldn't watch it. And then one of my best friends at the time was this kid named Matt, and we were talking like at lunch at school, and I was like, oh yeah, you know that X-Men show? That show is so dumb. I hate that show. And he was like, actually, I kind of like it. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I think it's pretty good. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, I guess I'll try watching it then. And so I watched it, and I was hooked from the first episode that I watched. Yeah, it drew me in right away. It does such a great job at having so many different characters and really, developing them well and giving you a good feel for them really quick. Because, other shows like Batman, for instance, the animated series mostly focuses on Batman. He's the main character, and as well as a few other supporting ones that play a big role, but it's mostly the Batman show, right? But X-Men, of course, is a team. So you had so many characters to juggle, and they did a pretty darn good job at it, I'd say, and giving a pretty equal amount of screen time for them. But I just remember being really hooked on it right from, the first episode I watched. I can't remember what the episode was, though. It was, somewhere in season 1. I do remember specifically Pizza Hut had those X-Men, they had some deal, like you bought like a certain pizza and you got like, you could get videotapes of the X-Men cartoons. So they had the first episode, The Night of the Sentinels, and I got that one. And, this wasn't like today where you can just stream stuff. You could pretty much only catch the episodes when they were on, and maybe if you recorded them, you'd have a copy of them. But otherwise, that was it. So,
That was it. Yeah, that's you. Be happy, all of you modern people out there who get to stream stuff just at your very whim. Like quick sidebar, my daughter Gwen, she's 5, and we stayed at a hotel when we went to go visit my dad in Iowa, and for the first time ever, she watched actual TV, not just streaming stuff, but she watched, we were watching the Disney Channel, and we were watching Bluey. And it was the first time, and she's like, what episode is this going to be? Like, I don't know, Gwen. I don't.
Wow.
And then she started getting frustrated. It's like, why are all these commercials on? Like, what's going on? Like, this is how we used to watch TV. Yeah. And she just kind of gave us this look like, what? Why? Why would you do this? I'm like, this was our only option. Like, and yeah, that's how we used to watch TV. So be grateful, child.
Yeah, you don't know what we've been through.
Exactly. So it's funny you mention your story, because my story is actually the exact opposite. Because when it comes to comic books, X-Men was my thing. I really liked the X-Men from the start. So once I heard about that there was going to be an animated show, I was immediately in. Sure, I did like a lot of other comic book characters, and this was a time where there was a lot of like really great comic book TV shows that were on. You could argue that this time period is perhaps one of the most pivotal times for comic book anything, because jumping from page to screen like this and to have the significance that it did, it's really great. Even to this day, some of these TV shows they have never been better than X-Men the animated series, and then the other one that we'll be talking about soon enough. But I don't, like, for me, like, first and foremost, that theme song at the beginning is among one of the all-time greats.
So good. Yeah, like, I learned how to play that on guitar, and yeah, rocked the heck out of that.
Well, and then also, like, it's so iconic that in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, as like, first, I'm spoiling it. If you haven't seen it by now, that's on you. Sorry about that. But there's the Illuminati scene where you have Professor X coming in, and you hear the theme song from the X-Men the animated series, and I'm not gonna lie, I squealed when I was so excited when that happened, because just that theme song is just so great. And between that and the character intros as well, like, you and I used to play that, and we used to like act out some of that stuff. Like, that's how much we loved that theme song.
Man. And they had like they had the section during the theme song where they would say each character's name, not like say it, but it would be like a caption.
It would pop up on the screen. Yeah.
Yeah, and they like showed the character doing something cool, and it was brilliant because it just gave you the name, gave you a quick idea of like what their power is or what their style is, all within about 1 second. And yeah, one of the most rocking theme songs ever.
Yeah, for sure. So That's
Like I
that's something that immediately comes to mind when I think of this show, is that theme song is among one of the greats for any show, not just comic books, but just any show that's out there. For me, like another thing that I just love about X-Men in general and just the animated series is that it's just filled with such great social commentary. It makes it a little bit more palatable even for kids watching it, because you get a sense like this is the X-Men, they're not treated very well, and they're,
right.
you know, they still want to help people who hate them. That's some powerful stuff as a kid. You're seeing that and you're like, wow, I wonder if I would do that in that situation.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you're a kid, even as an adult, a lot of time, if somebody comes at you, your first reaction is to hate that person or want to react in kind. But that was very, that was very instrumental, I think, for a lot of us of that age to kind of see like that there was a better way of dealing with things. And as they would often say, people hate what they don't understand. Man, just very profound for a kids show, more profound than a lot of adult shows, honestly.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, and then also just a lot more profound than a lot of other superhero shows at the time as well.
Oh yeah,
too.
for sure, not even close. And also, some of the things that they dealt with were really heavy, like and it was actually this is funny, but I think the way that I kind of like first really grasped the Holocaust was from the X-Men cartoon show. Yeah, I'm sure I'd heard about it before, or people had, told me about it. We were pretty young at the time, but that show made me understand like what a horrible thing that it was. When you're a kid at that age, if somebody showed you all these black and white photos of the Holocaust and tried to give you a history lesson, it wouldn't really click with you. But seeing it done in the format of a superhero show that you were already really into, it kind of opened you up in a way that you wouldn't normally have been to learning about some really important parts of history. So it almost sounds funny, like, yeah, I kind of learned about the Holocaust through the X-Men cartoon, but hey, when you're a kid at that age, it's really, whatever works.
Yeah. And kind of in that similar vein, that's kind of how I knew about like the civil rights movement and everything like that. The X-Men kind of put it in a way that was a little bit more, I guess, kind of what you said. It makes it a little bit more easier to understand when you see that these people are going through something similar to what people went through in real life. And it made sense, and it just hits you a little bit harder at that point. Once you learn about this stuff, like you said, you learn about this in school where you see these pictures, you don't really get the gravity of it, especially when you're younger. But then you see something else like this, like, oh, that's like that other thing that happened. Okay, wow, this is really tough.
Yeah. I mean, when I first was learning about the civil rights movement, my frame of reference for it was that MLK was Professor X and Malcolm X was Magneto.
Yeah.
Which I just realized, isn't that funny that it's that way when Professor X is not like Malcolm X?
They missed
mind blown.
They missed the mark on that one. How dare you? How dare you, X-Men creators?
Come on. So they got that going wrong. So
yeah, but it's just a lot of like social issues I was just exposed to from X-Men. And this isn't to say that other comic book shows or any other comic books didn't do that, because they most definitely did. But I don't know, X-Men was just in a different class all by itself.
A first class, you might say. I'm not even the dad here.
There you go.
Terrible. Sorry.
Oh, no. How dare you? How dare you? Chris, give me another thing that you remember about
Oh, man. Okay, so I'm going to get real with you here.
I'd expect nothing less.
Yes. My first crush, I cannot remember if it was either Princess Leia in Return of the Jedi or Rogue from the X-Men cartoon. And I'll call out a specific episode, which was called Deadly Reunions, where they
know exactly what you're talking about.
Cyclops, Storm, and Rogue go to like a power plant kind of thing and confront Magneto, and Cyclops gets injured pretty bad. And Rogue, whose mutant power is absorbing other people's powers and energy through skin-to-skin contact, does CPR on Cyclops. And anyway, basically she ends up absorbing his optic blasts, and a bunch of crazy stuff happens. But man, seeing her like lean down and kiss Cyclops, it made me feel very funny things. And seeing this girl that's she was like wearing this skin-tight green and yellow outfit with this big bulky jacket, and she's got this loose belt that's hanging down like off her hips, and she's got this sassy Southern accent, and she's like really playful, but then you can't touch her because, it could kill you.
She could kill you. Yeah.
Man. And it's funny. I've noticed that incarnations of Rogue since then have been a little less sexy,
For lack of a better word, sexy. Yep.
Like overtly sexy, where Rogue's boobs were just kind of like exploding all over the place all the time back then. So I guess that's good because it's a little bit. You could look at it as a little bit objectifying, but
yeah.
Yeah, I remember just staring at pictures of her in those X-Men. Like I had like a magazine that was like the X-Men cartoon and had all these pictures. And just as a kid, you don't know what to do with these feelings because you're experiencing them for the first time. But I would just stare at Rogue. And I still think she's smoking.
For as long as I've known you, I do remember you saying that Rogue was among one of your first crushes. So I do remember that. Yeah, it definitely agree. It's just a testament to the animation style, I guess, for the most part. But
very detailed animation.
It is very, very detailed animation. I will give them that. Another aspect of this show that I really liked is that, like you said, the X-Men is a team. And one of the nice things about that is that everybody kind of rotates in and out, gets to share the spotlight a little bit. And another good aspect, or not good aspect, but just another aspect of that is they've got a very large revolving door of villains that they've got. Now, if you take the X-Men as a whole and you put together their entire rogues gallery, like as a team and all the individuals, it's pretty good. But there's only like a handful of people individually that have a really strong individual like rogues gallery against them, and that starts and ends with Wolverine, because nobody else on the show has as many foes or nemesis or anything like that. But Wolverine seems to have like almost all of them.
Yeah, I mean, he's got Sabretooth, Omega Red, Lady Deathstrike. Maybe it's partly because he's like so old that he's just had more of a history. Like he could go back to the Cold War and tangle with Omega Red. He has all this history with Sabretooth. He's part of a project with Lady Death.
Yeah.
It's like who's Cyclops' main enemy? Mr. Sinister, probably.
Probably Wolverine for trying to constantly take his girl Jean Grey.
Dude,
even
Wolverine, take a hint.
Even though, I don't know. Sometimes you think I don't know. Cyclops gets a bad rep a lot of times because he kind of comes off as a jerk, but also it's the burden of leadership. So come on, give the guy a break.
I feel like they do a much better job of it, like in the comics and the cartoon, than they did in the movies. Where Cyclops, he can be stern and serious and is a bit of the Boy Scout. You in the not as much in the movies, but in the show and the comics, he gets your respect. You're like, I can see why he's like that.
For sure.
Like in the movies, you're rooting for Wolverine the whole time. You're like, he should be with Jean Grey. In the comics, you're kind of like, Wolverine, back off, dude.
Yeah, bro,
get your own girl.
That's the thing, and he has had other girls, as been portrayed throughout history on the show. Mm-hmm. Like he had a thing with Lady Deathstrike. He had a thing with, I think there was an episode where he goes back to Japan and there's somebody there, and then
Lady Mariko.
And then lo and behold, you've got an enemy there too, Silver Samurai. Yep. Good job, Wolverine. Yeah. You just managed to piss off everybody in every era of history that you've been a part of. Great job. Thank you.
Yeah, nice going, Knucklehead.
But at the same time, Wolverine, although not the leader of the X-Men, he was too much of a hothead. He was well known for his temper and his rage and everything like that. Among one of the more iconic ones, especially in the show, right? Because the big takeaway here is that Wolverine, he may not be the leader, but he's pretty much, I guess, for a lack of a better word, the star. Sure.
Yeah. I think, I would say so. I would say they do such a good job on that show of sharing the spotlight, but I would still say Wolverine probably he probably took the cake for that.
Yeah, for sure. So, Chris, give me any last thoughts or anything else for your lasting impressions, lasting legacies that you have of X-Men the Animated Series.
Man, such a groundbreaking show, and so many good memories of it. Real quick, another like heavy topic that you never see on kids' cartoon shows. I cannot think of any other example of this But they talked about religion on that show too. When they have the episode with Nightcrawler, who's a character, for those that don't know, that looks like a demon, and he's shunned as a demon, but he's actually a devout Catholic. And this show actually had this kids cartoon show had these characters grappling with their faith, where Wolverine feels like God has turned his back on mutants and abandoned them, and Nightcrawler, who has just as much reason to reject God as anyone, has chosen to follow him, and they kind of like have a debate about it. And it's like, what I honestly cannot think of another cartoon show for kids that would even mention that stuff, let alone talk about it in such a grown-up manner.
It's the only show that probably would at the time, or maybe not at the time, but the only show that would do that is VeggieTales, and that doesn't count because
yeah, it's actually specifically a religious show, but this was a superhero show.
But this was a superhero show, and yeah, that's something else that I did write about in my article. Shameless plug for my article, retrospective on X-Men the Animated Series on Scribe. You know, got to do
Read
that.
it.
I don't know why I
Read
just
it,
did
everyone.
thumbs up. It's an audio podcast, so
I can see you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, with the religious element and that, just another topic that X-Men was just not afraid to talk about and just be like, here kids, let's talk about this in a way that could be a little bit more palatable for you and just something that you can understand. So
and it didn't, it's like, the people who made that show didn't think kids were stupid. They knew kids were smart, and they would be able to handle stuff and at least to a certain extent, understand things that they would give them. So they had respect for their audience. Anybody who's going to write a show, keep that in mind.
Are you saying that the creators of SpongeBob SquarePants don't have respect for their audience?
I have never seen SpongeBob SquarePants, so I don't know. I don't know.
Well, that was part of the area of Nicktoons the era of Nicktoons that we just rolled right past that, because you and I grew up on like Doug,
Rocko's Modern
Life, all like the good ones, dare I say. So
good.
But somehow SpongeBob is still on. I don't understand.
I mean, people love it. There must be a reason. I just don't know. I've never watched it, but yeah. It's a beloved show.
So, the lasting legacy for me with X-Men the Animated Series is that this is just one of those shows that just helped develop my love for comics, and just make sure it just kind of reinforces the fact that, I really enjoyed, watching this stuff come to life in different ways. I don't think the voice work gets enough credit for what they did in this, and it's getting so much credit that Disney is looking to, Disney, horse for money and everything like that. They're looking to bring it back for a reboot. I guess it's kind of a reboot or a continuation, whatever it is, but they know that there's still an audience for this show, and they're bringing it back for this reason. So yeah, X-Men the Animated Series, it's one of those shows that I wore out a few copies of the VHS tapes that I got from this when it was just a single episode. Again, not just for streaming people, but for like, hey, remember when like DVDs came out and like you could watch like 7 or 8 episodes at a time instead of like the VHS tapes that you could only watch like 1 episode at a time? Yeah, be grateful, people.
Yeah. You don't understand, kids.
The struggles of suburban white children in this. Yeah, it's great. Chris,
hey, you're half Filipino.
Forget about that.
I'm the only fully white dude here.
That's fair. I will give you that. Chris, give me some of your favorite episodes, or like give me some of your top episodes of the series.
Okay. Well, like I mentioned, Deadly Reunions with Rogue, for reasons I mentioned. The Nightcrawler episode is great.
The Nightcrawler episode is number 4 on my countdown that I did. So, yes.
Yeah, it's so good. The Dark Phoenix saga, which isn't a single episode, but that was like an ongoing thing where, for those not in the know, the character Jean Grey gets absorbed by a cosmic force that causes her to do not such nice things.
Wait a second. Hold on. Time out. You're saying that she was absorbed by a cosmic force, but in the movies she just had it in her, and then she had to die in order for it to be brought out?
Oh no, I don't know.
What's up with that?
I love half of the movies so much, and the other half are not so great. But
no, they're terrible. But it is what it is.
The good ones are great, though.
Yes, they are. The Phoenix saga is number 2 on my list because that if Disney, take note, if you want to do a good Phoenix Saga, because Fox, you couldn't do it twice. You had 2 chances and you messed them both up. If you want to do a good Phoenix Saga story, look at those episodes on X-Men the Animated Series. They did it as loyally to the comics as they could, and they still managed to elicit a huge emotional response from that. And it was great. It was so good.
What's your number one?
My number one was Days of Future Past.
Oh yeah, so good.
It's an iconic series, and just an iconic story for the X-Men in general. And look, I liked Days of Future Past, the live action, like the second trilogy one, just fine. They took some liberties, a lot of liberties. Let's just call it what it is. But it was, watching it this way, this is how it was meant to be. And that's something that I give the show a lot of credit for, is that they tried to stick to the comic as much as they could with trying to tell like a good story. But yes, I do understand that every show, it takes liberties, and source material is just, a baseline, and they have to tell a coherent story. But yeah, I love the Days of Future Past episode. And then beyond that, I've always been a big fan of the Cure storyline and the band, I guess. But the just the whole storyline surrounding the Cure, I think at the time I didn't really understand it that much. It's like, why would anyone want to cure something about them that's just who they are, type of thing. And once you read up on it, it's like, oh, this is actually supposed to parallel how people felt about homosexuality.
Right.
Like way back when. It's like, okay, this takes on a whole new meaning when you read up on that. But when I was a kid watching this episode, it was like, oh, that's actually a really hard choice. Would I want to give up my mutant powers? But if that meant I could be quote unquote normal, like, that's tough.
Right.
I don't know what I would do.
Those heavy issues for that show.
Yeah.
Again.
Night of the Sentinels was on there, just because it's the first episode. So
Hey, we were all Jubilee in that episode. That was we live vicariously through Jubilee when you watch that. That's when she gets introduced and thrown into this world of the X-Men. That was all of us with that episode.
Yeah. And then the last one that I will talk about, because this one is, sure, it's not the best episode, but it's one of my favorites. The Unstoppable Juggernaut one.
Oh yeah.
Because the Juggernaut is one of those villains that's like, sure, this is never addressed in any of the live action movies, but like the Juggernaut has actually like a really strong connection to the X-Men, because he was Xavier's
stepbrother,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know why the live action movies just never address that, but it is what it is, I guess. But this is also the episode that had Colossus.
Yes.
And I always thought that Colossus was such a cool character. Just this Russian guy with a heart of gold, that he's super strong, but he turns to steel.
Right.
That's so cool. And just again, a quick thing just to show mine and Chris's friendship. We used to go to arcades, and we used to play an X-Men comic book, or an X-Men game at the comic, or at an arcade. Just some of the characters on there that you could play as were cool, even though like some of the powers were a little strange. Like Nightcrawler just teleported all throughout the screen and works, but whatever.
Wolverine like scrapes his claws together and shoots out a bunch of laser sparks.
Yeah, exactly. But Colossus's power, he would like erupt with his power and generate like a little force field that like would damage other people around him, and he would have this scream. Like, not how his power works, but hey, it was still cool nonetheless. But
you could hear that clear across the arcade. You could tell somebody was playing X-Men as Colossus, because you just hear.
Yeah. And then just the thing about that as well is that the Colossus versus Juggernaut rivalry, that. Because between that in Deadpool 2, and then one of mine and Chris's just all-time favorite shows, there's this very old X-Men cartoon. It's called Pride of the X-Men, where we used to watch that VHS a lot, and we quoted it a lot because it was ridiculous.
So bad.
But that was something on there where each X-Men was paired up against a villain, and they would go up against them. And Colossus and Juggernaut were in that too. So it's like, wow, it's like these two are just meant to fight with one another.
Yeah, he had the unstoppable force versus the Man of Steel, the Steel Man.
Speaking of Man of Steel, R.I.P. to Henry Cavill's Superman. What are you doing,
Oh.
HBO and Warner Brother or Discovery Warner Brothers? What are you doing? Anyways, that's for another topic. Chris, any final thoughts or anything else about X-Men the animated series?
Yeah, the last thing I would love to say that was so cool about X-Men was that when you were a kid at that age, boys and girls were very separated by most things. Boys had their shows and their interests, and girls had their shows and their interests. They were generally very separate things, but X-Men was the one show as a kid that I remember the boys and the girls both loved. And partly because X-Men, is a superhero show that had really great female characters, obviously Rogue, but also Storm and Jean Grey and Jubilee was a lot of fun. So they made these female characters that were really strong and had very individual personalities. It gave the young girls at the time something to watch and enjoy and look up to, and characters they could pretend to be like. And so I remember as a kid, X-Men, the animated series, was like one of the only bridges between boys and girls.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that, because when I was in first grade, we would play X-Men on during recess, and it just wasn't the boys playing it. And yeah, you're absolutely right, because back in the early 90s there were clearly shows and stuff meant for girls, like your Barbies, your My Little Ponies, your I'm gonna show my age a little bit, but your Strawberry Shortcakes, as if My Little Pony didn't do that. Anyways, what's wrong with me? But then boys, they had their own stuff too. But this is one that just kind of opened the doors for a lot of different things. So that's a good place to end it on that. So Chris, I greatly appreciate it. You taking the time to talk to me about X-Men the animated series. Do you have anything you want to shamelessly plug? Like where can people find you, or you got anything going on that you want to shamelessly plug?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Chris Bostrom or XorChris007. Yeah, I do a lot of acting and writing and music and stuff. So yeah, come check it out. Give me a holler. I'm always down to chat about X-Men and superhero stuff. Anything like that, let me know. And yeah,
awesome.
I don't bite.
Hard, at least. So
yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
That's going to do it for this episode of SPDM TV. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to anything and everything wherever you get your podcast. Join us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Blue Sky at SPDM Crew. Check out our website. Check out our website at com. Shout out to High Flyer Creative Studios for making our awesome logo. Greatly appreciate their support. And if you have any creative needs, contact them at highflyercreative.com. Check out the other shows on our network. We've got a lot of great content on there, and I'm really proud of the work that everyone's doing. We've got a ton of different things that you could ask for. So check out the other shows on our network. And if you've got a podcast idea or you're interested in being part of the SPDM crew as a guest or collaborating, email us at gmail.com. Until next time, happy watching, friends.